Now let us try to understand what is the origin of this stress. Where does this stress come from? I think, okay, and that is what I propose to you, to learned listeners of this webinar, that stress comes from expectations. Okay, if you take out all the expectations of your life away for a second, no expectation, life completely free from expectation, by nature you will feel relaxed. But you can't have a system without expectation. So here is the dichotomy. I think the expectations which are given by others. For example, if I am a student and my teacher says that I am expected to score very high, I am expected to learn this much by this much time. And if the expectation is given by my parents who say, well, son, you have to earn a lot, you have to be a great engineer, you have to be an IS officer, or you have to be, a great executive of a company like Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella. So it will put stress on me because I may not be wanting that. My inner being does not want to be an executive or does not want to be an engineer. I want to be an architect, or I want to be a painter, or I want to be a dancer even. So my expectations and expectations given by others, they have a mismatch sometimes, or many a times perhaps, in some cases. So when there is a mismatch, it produces stress because I respect my parents, I respect my teachers, I'm expected to obey them. If I obey them, then I'm doing things which I don't like. So that creates stress. And such expectations are, I think, misplaced expectations. These are wrong expectations, expectations given by others. If we talk of faculty members in the colleges or universities or schools, teachers, professors, lecturers, okay, they have expectation from their management, from their bosses, principals, etc., etc. But they have a family to look after, they have themselves to look after, they have to manage the problems of their life. In their life, beloved ones are suffering, then it brings suffering to us. So there is a plethora of problems that faculty is handling. And then if there are expectations from the education system, that also adds to the stress. So all the expectations which come from others are misplaced expectations. I choose to call it misplaced expectation because this is a wrong expectation. But the point is that without expectation, I cannot have a system. So what is the solution? Others' expectations give me stress. Can I have my own expectations? Yes, I can have. But are they good for the system? If they are good, yes, fantastic. So I can generate my own expectations which are good for the society, good for the system, good for the management, good for the students, but they are self-generated expectations. I call it positive expectations. For example, if I am lecturer in a college, then I should first think that if I want this job, that is very important. I have option to make decisions. I have choices. So decisions should be made consciously and based on the fact what I like and what I don't like. If I like to be a lecturer, to be a teacher, then I should expect that I must be myself a good teacher. I should love my students. I should make my students great. I should be learned myself. I should be knowledgeable so that I can teach my students well. And I should see that my institute, it is my institute. Okay. Then these expectations are positive expectations because I'm loving my institute, I'm loving my students, I am loving my management, and my attitude is that of love for doing this profession. So these expectations I would call as positive expectations. Now the good thing is that based on these expectations, the institute will run better. I will be good to my students. I will be a very nice lecturer because I am dedicated to it. Okay, this is my love. This is my passion. So when the expectation is created by my inner passion, there is no reason that such an expectation will give me stress. When I work hard on students, I will sleep well because I love my students. I want to give them. When I love my institute, even if I clean it myself, I will be happy. But if someone asks me to clean it, maybe I'll get angry. If my boss asks to clean the room, I'll say, what do you mean? I'm a professor. So my, the negative feelings will start surfacing. But if this expectation comes from within me, which we call as true positive expectations, then I will do anything and everything because I love it. And there is no reason that it will create stress. I will have a very comfortable, cool, relaxed atmosphere for students, for management, for my colleagues, for my peers, everyone. I will enjoy my profession and others will enjoy too. And I will do it as a service to the God. In fact, Vivekananda said something great, that I actually serve God. Ignorants call him human. Humans are the form of God. When I serve them, I actually serve God. God is not something, in certain places where he is sitting or he is in idol or he is in specific areas. No, God is everywhere, in everyone. When I serve humanity, I actually serve God. So Vivekananda said it very beautifully. I serve God, ignorants call it human or man. So if we have that attitude, then reward is that I will be doing my things without stress. It will be a joy. Teaching will be a joy, learning will be a joy. Now some people say, see, I am already in a job, and actually speaking, this is not what I expected. And lot of students, lot of faculty members, they talk to me after the lecture that, look, we are already in a profession which I don't like. I'm already in a job which actually is very stressful. But I cannot leave this job because this is my living also. If I leave this job, how would I have food? How would I have a house? I'll be on streets. So I have to have job, but this job is very stressful. What should I do? Now this is a very tricky situation. I found one solution, that you should connect your passions to your commitments. Now let us identify our passions. What do we love? And we connect it to our commitment if we are already in the job, and try to make the system which is very relaxed, very loving, very caring. And these things, I tell you, will lead us to a wonderful system. That's what I believe, and that's what we have experimented through our NGO's activities. Now I think we interact with each other. Yeah. So
Sure,
are there
sir.
some questions, Satyapal?
Sure, sir. I will make a small announcement. If you have any question, you can raise your hand digitally, and then I will call up your name, and then you can go ahead with your question.
Sir, very well articulation of the things, and few of the things are there in our mind, especially the point which you have raised. When parents themselves, they tend to force their kids for specific competitive exam preparation,
Yes.
and in spite of knowing the fact that it is not good for child as a person, but maybe because of societal pressure or maybe because of competition which we are living
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
sometimes we are not left with any other choice but to force them. And
Yes.
sometimes that hidden pressure which we realize that child is facing primarily because by their parents.
Yes.
So my question to you, sir, we means in India we are living in a competitive world, and we have to survive in the situation. On one side, we do not want to pressurize our kids, but on another side, we are aware that this is a situation where we have to, or our kids have to make their career in, and in future they may have to face personal pressures as well on personal front. So
Yes.
what is your mool mantra for parents, means what is the way out, means so that we can maintain an equilibrium
Yes.
in the current age?
I think first thing should be that we should teach parents, not students. We should tell them that do you want your child to be happy, or do you want your child to be just wealthy? So that they should be able to understand and distinguish. So parents also need lot of education. Okay. Now, how do we do it in reality? It's very tough. I think some NGOs, some individuals, they are definitely putting efforts, but they are, tip of the iceberg. This problem is so huge, and you said it very well. Our society, I think, one of the most competitive system in the world. Okay, I've never seen it, such a system in USA or in Japan or in Europe. Okay, I mean the kind of struggles which the level of struggle which students or even faculty members undergo, okay, to remain in good position and to succeed academically is too much. So we have to do it at two levels. One, that we should make the parents understand this. Okay, so maybe sometime you should organize a conference for parents. Okay, and second is at individuals level. See, our education now, parents have put pressure. They have forced their children to go to Kota to take classes and then get admission into IITs. Now at various IITs, they are putting lot of efforts to teach mental sciences, for example. Okay, they are I have seen at IIT Kharagpur, for example, or even at IIT Kanpur, they even call monks from Ramakrishna ashram, and they are highly educated monks. For example, there is one Swami Sarvapriyanand. Okay, he comes to IITs and he teaches these scholars that look how you have spoiled your life to get this prized seat, so-called prized seat. Okay, if the system were good, through relaxed education, we would have anyway achieved this. Maybe we could have achieved better than this. As I said, that my experience of learning architecture from the Harvard faculty was a unique experience. I mean, such a tough subject, but such a relaxed and such an easygoing and such a excellent learning experience. Why can't we have it in our universities or colleges or schools? Every level. It is possible. But we first, as a teacher, as a gurus, we have to take initiatives. We have to whatever background or under whatever pressure our students have come, at least at our institutes, let us give them a relaxed atmosphere, not slack atmosphere. There is a difference. I mean, we should we should stimulate our students to take interest in learning through curiosity, for example. Okay, but if we impose discipline and things like that, and if we are also very strict about result oriented approach or result centric approach, or if we are too much about exam centric approach, then things will not be relaxed. So we have to bring change at a parental level, at our educational level, and students. Unfortunately, we do not encourage the faculty of thinking amongst our students. I should honestly tell you, I also come from the same educational system. Only after I became Humboldt Fellow, my thinking ability started opening. Till then, I was not even thinking. So unless I think, how would I know what is my passion? What is my interest? So we should stimulate our students to think. They should look into themselves. Therefore, a lot of institutes, especially I've seen at IIMs, they conduct meditation classes, they conduct spiritual classes, so that people can go inside and think. This we should inculcate. Even at the universities in Jaipur, our NGO is advocating that some part of the education must be on inner thinking.
Very true.
Yeah, we should go inside and think. And then
Yes.
this change will come from the students themselves. They will realize, oh, my parents are putting pressure, I can explain them. Some students are pretty smart, and if they think well, I think I have seen in my life some children are so good thinkers that they influence their parents rather than the other way around. So these are the kinds of things which we should be trying, and it will take a very long time because it's a huge system, and it is suffering from this disease, I should say, of quote unquote misplaced expectations and resulting stress, and the kind of education that we have for a very long time, since British time. So it is a very long time that our country has suffered under this wrong way of thinking, wrong way of expectations, and wrong way of teaching. And now to change it requires horrendous efforts. But if we don't change now, we will change never, perhaps. And it is the time that we are becoming an economically developed. Let us also become mentally developed. Let us also become spiritually developed. Let us also become developed as a human being. Yeah. So now is the time that our education must think in these directions. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Sir, one
Thank you,
point
sir.
I would wish to raise here. You rightly pointed out that we need to address at parental level, of
Parental
course, but in education system also we have to put in some
Yeah.
effort so that we can, maybe it may be the drop in the ocean, but we have to initiate this thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, sir, we
It-
would get back to you with the.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think this the kind of seed that has been originated today. We will definitely would to take it ahead.
Thank
Sir,
you so
one
much.
thing I would wish to mention here. I think you can give your point of view. We pressurize our kids to face competitive exams, and sometimes they may get succeeded also. But life is it works in the oscillation, and we
Yes.
never make them learn how to handle failure. And that is why increasing number of suicides. I think this
Yes.
is one of the major concerns.
Very,
Neither,
very important concern. Very important.
yeah,
In fact, if they are, developed spiritually, then I tell you, failure is actually a joy. Because it's the failure which teaches me. If I become successful after some competition or some exam, I think, yes, I have achieved my goal. I become complacent. But failure has much more important role. I start thinking, oh, something is not right that I did. I did something wrong. So failure is itself a great teacher. We should not hate failure. In fact, we should love failure also. If we love everything in life, we will be wonderful students, we will be wonderful parents, we will be wonderful children, we would be wonderful citizens. Okay. And I have seen it. It is achievable in many countries. Okay. Especially in Scandinavian countries. I mean, fantastic. They have made their society so beautiful. It's not that they are developed just because they are financially developed. No, their minds are also very well developed. The kind of Vedic knowledge and the kind of ancient Indian knowledge that we talk about, there you see is being practiced. Openness, closeness to nature, okay, respect for nature, respect for each other inherently comes when you are relaxed. Thank you very much, Lalita ji.
thank you so
Thank you,
much,
sir. We'll take next question from Professor N.D. Mathur.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Sir, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
I'm N.D. Mathur. Sir, you have said that parents need to be addressed.
Yes.
And probably the solution lies in transaction analysis training of the parents. That critical parents have to be turned into nurturing parents rather. So the solution lies in the transaction analysis training, and the parents should undergo the training, so the problem can be solved.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you, sir.
Next, thank you, sir. Next, Dr. Ravindra R. Kekani. Please unmute yourself, sir. You can ask question.
Hello, Professor.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, please.
Sir, I think the intended question has already been raised by Dr. Lalita Madam, and you already aptly answered already. Still, what I just wanted to check up with you, as you might be already aware of, in our academics, maybe at the university levels, even at the primary levels, as well at the secondary levels, the spirituality and nearness to the nature has never been thought over in the quest of the modern IT knowledge and all.
Yes.
And as you rightly mentioned in your interaction, it is very true. People from Europe, people from Germany, people from Russia, they have been rushing to India to understand and to get the Vedic culture and incorporate in them.
Yes.
And to our great surprise and shock also, hardly any research is taking place in those lines to implicate Sanskrit, to implicate spirituality, to incorporate spiritual ingredients in the academic sphere.
Yes.
So, in order to make this happen, do you have any particular guidelines? If you could kindly recommend.
Yeah, actually, I have not thought much about this subject, but what you are telling is very appealing, and it's very correct also. For example, in Germany, I have seen, you talked about Sanskrit. In fact, there is a radio in Germany called Radio Cologne, Radio Cologne. Yeah, they even broadcast a program in Sanskrit every day. Okay, so Sanskrit is highly respected, and Vedic knowledge is very popular, and people like to learn. And practically every university in Germany has a department of Indology. Okay.
True.
But in India, we don't have. We think this is what we are. So, but over the period, I think we have become complacent. See, now two things are coming to my mind. That academic institutes should incorporate, this knowledge of living in commune with nature. Okay. Now, this is not something religious. Okay. This is as sectorial. Nature is not Hinduism or Islam or Christianity. Nature is nature. Okay. If we talk about God and spirituality, then some people tend to think, oh, this curriculum is not as sectorial, and this could be religious, for example. Okay. Our institutes, because we are a very broad cultural, we are a set of many cultures. We are a melting pot of many religions and cultures. Therefore, we should not, create a curriculum which students or faculty should think that it's a dividing dividing activity. So we should not do that. We should do everything which is secular, which is asectorial, and this can be done through love with nature, for example. Nature is such a wonderful teacher, and learning yourself and your insight is also nature. Okay, I am a product of nature, and I'll go back to nature. Whatever I am just belonging to nature. I am nature's child. Okay, nature will look after me and even finish me. Okay, so having said this, I think there is a need that we should talk to our management, to our education ministries and things like that, that this Vedic knowledge, by the way, is also a sectorial. They talk about nature, they talk about human and nature interaction. Okay, where do we come from? What is the life? What is consciousness? Okay, it's not, lot of ancient Indian knowledge is not sectorial. It's nature. It's like a scientific knowledge. Even a lot of knowledge from Buddhism is also scientific. But later on, it becomes a religion, and then people get segregated. Only certain group tends to follow it, and others tend to hate it. They say my religion is great. So this, division is making us not to realize that goodness of one thought, if I adopt in my life, it is good for me, good for others, good for my family, good for society, and good for the country. So this boundaryless exploration and understanding of science and nature is something which I think our institute should adopt. Okay, so maybe we have to think more and we should interact more on this subject. But I take your point very important and very seriously, thinkable point. This point should not be taken easily. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir.
We'll take one last quick question, sir.
Yeah.
This is asked by one of our PhD student. You want to know that while doing PhD, there is a lot of appreciation about what will be my future, because there is a lot of uncertainty associated with it. So
Yes.
how to overcome that stress? What my future will be, whether I will be.
Yes. Yes. Very good question and very practical question. And the answer is that we have to practice something. And what is that something? Let me tell you that. See, I should first know about myself. That, we always live in present. We neither live in past nor we live in future. Whatever has happened in past, it is just memory. It's not a reality now. You cannot go back and touch the past. Okay. Nor you can touch future. You cannot go tomorrow and eat today what you will eat tomorrow. So first you have to understand the true nature of time. Okay. When you understand this, you will find that past and future both are subjects of not our concern at all, and you have to practice it. You have to practice only to live in the moment of now. See, now I am talking to you, you are my God. I am enjoying talking to you. Okay. And next moment, maybe I'll be talking to someone else. Then he or she is my God. Okay. I always talk to gods. Okay. Whom others call as human. Okay. So you have to practice it. Once you start practicing, you will forget all the worries of future. You will get rid of all the regrets of past, and you will only enjoy this moment. Okay, just this moment, just one moment. Don't worry for future, don't regret for past, just enjoy your now and leave everything else to nature. Okay, nature will look up. You are product of nature. You are not your own product. Okay, nature made us. Nature will look after us, and nature will also finish us. So trust nature, have faith in nature. Nature will do everything the way it has planned to do. You are just meant, you are a divine soul, you are a great species called human. Enjoy your moment of now, because there will be a time when this now will not be there. When I end, where is my now? Okay, when a person is gone, his now is also gone. Okay, so it is only the moment of now which is important, and practice to enjoy it. And how do we enjoy it? Do the things which you love. If you love doing your research, yes, do it. If you love to play basketball, go and play. Okay. If you love to eat dahi vada somewhere in Jaipur, go to that hotel and eat it. Enjoy your life. Okay. And if you are committed to your research, I have already told, connect your passion to your commitment. Okay. You give a balance between your commitment and your passions. Something that you enjoy. Some people I found during pandemic, they enjoy helping others. I mean, what a beautiful passion they have. Okay. I found one woman in our area where I'm staying in Navi Mumbai. She has a passion of feeding dogs. Every night I see from my window with a mask on, and she's an elderly woman, and a lot of dogs gather because they also wait, okay, that this loving woman will come and feed us. So do anything which you love or which you enjoy, but live in the moment of now. Don't think of future. All the best.
Thank you very much, sir.